The online dialogue series of Refugee Poets was commissioned by the Special Initiative on Displacement SIF program of the Civil Peace Service of GIZ. We appreciate the discussions and insights shared. The opinions expressed in these dialogue series are those of the speakers. They do not necessarily reflect the opinions or views of GIZ.
Wow, that was amazing. Thank you so much, Sheibo. We are so happy to have you and to be here again today. And this is our third forum focusing on refugee matters. And today we are going to discuss about livelihood and economy inclusion of refugees. We are so delighted to be here. We have been working together with Refi Poets, Anika Initiative, and GIZ, the Civil Peace Service Special Initiative on Displacement. And we also have an amazing team behind the scene that is supporting this. Thank you so much. We also have our sign language interpreters, Clinton and Faith. Welcome on set. My name is Joelle Hangi.
Yes, thank you so much, Joelle. And today's discussion is going to be centered towards livelihood and economic inclusion of the refugees. And perhaps we just get into our guests today, the panelists that we're going to have here today. I'll start with perhaps Gilbert, just a short introduction in terms of what your name and also what you do.
Yeah, my name is Gilbert Asukulu. I'm the executive director of L'Africana organization. L'Africana is a refugee-led organization. And we are located at Kabiria area and Kawangware, and we are in the Dagoretti constituency. So we intervene in livelihood and education, and under these two big programs, we also have different activities. Under this, we also work in SGPV, and then we also support young girls who have been, unfortunately, undergo this kind of situation within the community. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Gilbert. Anne.
Good afternoon. It's nice to be here. My name is Anne Sabani Mbugwa. I am the executive director and the founder of Center for Livelihood Advancement, CIFLA. Simply we call ourselves CIFLA. We are registered in Kenya as non-for-profit, and our mandate is basically to ensure that women in informal economies lead sustainable livelihoods. And so we look forward to where women and girls are in the center of livelihoods options. And so in Nairobi, we working in the informal settlements, looking at women in informal economies, including the female domestic workers, Mama Mboga, Mama Fua, and we also work with female domestic workers who are refugees. And so that is why I'm here.
Thank you so much, and we are glad to have you. Perhaps Muyomba, I hope I pronounced it right.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Muyomba Fed is my name. A lawyer by profession. I have rather interacted with refugees for quite a number of years now, particularly through the civil society as a human rights advocate. I currently teach law, specifically refugee law and forced migration studies at the Mount Kenya University, Parklands Law Campus. Thank you for having me here.
You're welcome, Fred. Thank you so much. The second time coming into the show. Karibu. Perhaps you could just reintroduce yourself to the people.
Thank you so much. Yes. My name is Jean-Paul Kasika. I'm the coordinator for RELON Kenya. RELON Kenya stands for the Refugee-Led Organization Network of Kenya, which is a network umbrella. We are registered as a national network of refugee-led organizations or refugee-led initiatives. So we do a couple of activities, including advocacy in terms of inclusion and meaningful participation of both refugees and RLOs. And we also, we also partner with our RLOs in terms of implementation of activities such as livelihood, education, and so forth. So we also capacity build our RLO members. So thank you so much to have me for the second time again.
You're all welcome to our panelists. Now, in terms of livelihood and economic inclusion, what are we looking at? We're looking at employment. We're looking at opportunities. We're also looking at how sustainable the refugees are going to stay here in Kenya. Now, in 2016, we saw 400,000 refugees were forced into starvation. And now it forced the World Food Program to come in and help them out. And last year in 2020, we saw 2.7 million people across Eastern Africa were forced into starvation, and also amid the COVID-19. Now, what did this mean? This made the World Food Program to cut on food and cash assistance by 30% in terms of to the refugees across Eastern Africa. We had refugees from Ethiopia, from Kenya, Uganda, Djibouti, and even South Sudan. That's just a brief inclusion. Back to Joelle.
Yes, thank you so much, Mamadi. Guided by the Global Compact on Refugees in line with the 2030 Agenda, as well as the Sustainable Development Goal, UNHCR has tried to change their approach solely from the humanitarian approach toward more sustainable, approach that will be more inclusive and project that will also help both refugees and host communities, not just to survive, but also to drive and become self-reliant. And Kenya, being one of the biggest country in Africa to host refugees, has also tried to come up with a hand of support toward this initiative and support that movement by coming up with a comprehensive refugee program that is like a long-term projects that focusing in inclusive and sustainable projects that will help both refugees and host communities as well here in Kenya. And maybe as we are trying to go deep into our conversation today with our panelists, my first question will be directed toward Muyomba. Maybe we'll just like to hear from you. How do you think the Kenyan government can balance between the rights to work freely of refugees in Kenya and the rates of unemployment here in Kenya? Because currently we are really facing that issue, and we are wondering how the Kenyan government can balance that. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, I must first of all commend the government of Kenya, because there are not many friendly countries out there that will willingly accept to host refugees. Hosting refugees is a big burden to any government, at the very least, economically, financially, and all other parameters. So we thank the government, because our government is, over the years, been very receptive. However, I'll also mention that under our Constitution of Kenya, every person in this country has a right to work. That includes citizens, foreigners, refugees. Unfortunately, a refugee has more challenges in accessing the permit to work. Refugees in Kenya require a Class M work permit for them to formally seek employment. Even though the Class M work permit is freely given by government, record indicated that there are very few refugees who actually eventually get it upon application, which means, even though we are saying, means you are welcome to work, it's not easy to get the permit. Now, the justification from the government side is that there are millions of citizens who also cannot get employment. And the government is duty-bound to ensure that only foreigners who provide services that a citizen cannot offer and then allowed to work. But then if you assess how our government operates, you'll find many, many foreigners who are doing many jobs in this country, which can also be undertaken by citizens, which means refugees, therefore, are disadvantaged. It's very difficult for a refugee to get work permit, even though they have the skill. Now, how do we balance about this? My own experience in the refugee sector is that nations that have made milestone in this field have made it a free economy where anyone who has the skill is able to be given a platform and compete in the market, both as a foreigner or as a citizen. That way, we then get the best value for money. But for our country, that's a very difficult discussion, because as you know, it's not easy to just open the floodgates. There'll be so many challenges. So my take is that we need to put in policies which are currently not there, which will then make it easier for any person who has skill and is willing to work to be allowed to work, and then deal with other issues later. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Maybe just to move on to Anne. Why is it so hard? We've heard Myomba mention it's so hard to get into the work. Why is it so hard for the refugees, especially to get the opportunities that are there?
Thank you for that question. Myriad of reasons, majorly language barrier. So you'll notice that there's a commanding language of every country, and in Kenya we have English and Swahili, and so we realize that we'll have a scholar, a profession coming from country X, let's say from Congo, who can fluently speak Swahili according to from their Congolese Swahili. But when they come to Kenya, sometimes they are not able to express themselves well. But also the English, because like Congolese will speak French, but while in Kenya, they are required to speak good English and fluent English for that matter. And so you may realize that they have language barrier. The second reason is the post-traumatic disorders that comes with the refugee experience. You realize that for you to be able to present yourself out there, even to compete equally for employment, you have to not just have papers, but you also have to have a very sober standing in terms of your mental standing, so that you notice that some of them have psychosocial issues and they have experienced a lot of harassment and abuse along the way. And so they are not even able to confidently stand out and claim a space that they qualify. That I would say second. Thirdly, remember that these people refugees have come from a different economic platform, and the economic setup is quite different compared to Kenya. And the kind of, the fact that they have come from a fragile community, most of them come from fragile environment. And so even their education has been affected in a way, in one way or the other. Either they were not able to really complete studies. And so when they come here, some of them are not able to reintegrate back to school and probably complete. And so they are not able to, again, compete fruitfully. And so they are laid back. And that's why most of them, again, will end up to the informal economies where they will look for the manual job where they can easily compete. But also remember our employment law, as our colleague said here, is that, our policy about employment is quite closed. And so, trying to maneuver around the migration law and, getting the working papers right, I mean, it's a whole set of complex experience. And so most of them will say, even when they have graduate studies, they have experience from other places they have come from, and they will just decide, let me get to an informal job because that's what I can access for now. So I think I would say that besides the training, because you see, for us to get a white-collar job, you need the professional background. Like you've trained in a certain course, like you are a lawyer, let's say. For example, you've done law. But when you come to Kenya, you have to adjust quickly, probably get to Kenya School of Law, compete equally with Kenyan counterpart. But even getting to that level where you can access the local education, it's very difficult for refugees. Finally, of course, the economic burden that comes with movement. There's loss of property, there's loss of documents. Sometimes many of them are not even able to to provide document that proves their country of source, the country of origin. So when they are in the refugee country, in their refugee status, like in Kenya, they don't have documents. And so how do you even confirm that you did, you've done a certain course? You lost all the documents because most of them they ran to this country as a result of war. And so they have lost their documents, their families, their household have been banned. So they have nothing really to confirm that they went to any kind of school. And so the vulnerability again increases. And so how do you compete without paper? So you're there, it's true you've done a certain course, but you cannot prove that you did that course. Mm-hmm. So I think I would stop at that.
Yes. I think you've articulated quite a number of issues. Mm-hmm. Perhaps my concern is to the one you started with about the language barrier. Now, we have a fourth generation of refugees in this country. And these are people who, they don't know anywhere. They only know Kenya. For them, and they have been brought up here, and they can speak fluent Swahili, even more than Kenyans themselves. Now, what happens to this fourth generation of refugees when it comes to opportunities, such opportunities you mentioned, and challenges?
Of course, yes, they are Kenyan. They can speak fluent Swahili, they can speak fluent English, but they still have the baggage of confirming and, assuring that the employer that I am a Kenyan. You see, and that's again comes to the migration law, and the refugee law that my colleague here is talking about. That is true, I can speak English, I can speak Swahili. But before I employ you, I need to know where you have come from. You have to provide documents. You have to provide, if you are Kenyan, you have to provide the identification document. If you're not Kenyan, you have to provide alien, status documents and refugee status documents. So if you can't provide all those documents, then you cannot qualify for any job. So you can be in Kenya for a long while and you've never been given status, in a way that you can be able to access employment locally. So that's a major, and I think that's a challenge that my colleague is talking about, that is, the policy does not allow that quick transition from a refugee status to a person who can, legally work in Kenya. So yes, you've been here, your parent is a refugee, and automatically you become a refugee by that status. Yeah, I think that's how.
Yeah, I think you just mentioned a great point, but I'm just wondering on the same question, probably the perspective of a refugee can be a little bit different from what you have said. Maybe we can hear from Jean-Paul on the same question. Your opinion on that?
Yeah, thank you so much, Joelle. I think I have a different opinion in regard to what she just mentioned. And I don't totally agree with that kind of defense, because refugees are qualified. They are equally professional like any other Kenyan. They went to school like the way Kenyans go to school. We have quite a set of refugees who've completed their education back home. You don't say someone like me with my age means I never completed my education. I did not come to Kenya when I was still a minor. So there's very many professional refugees in different fields. But as my colleague Farada, or Miomba rather, said, yes, the law is very clear, but it becomes a little bit hard. Especially, there's no good political will in order to implement that law, to fully implement it. Because when it comes to the labor laws or the Labor Act, so it's very clear, does not state either refugee or Kenyan who's supposed to get the job as it is. It's only, there's no that good political will in order to implement the law as it is. Because as he said, the Class M permit, clearly it should be free of charge. But now the process takes longer than it's supposed to be. So secondly, when you compare, you brought another aspect, like we have fourth generations of refugees who are born in Kenya. Even some of them, their parents were born in Kenya. Now they have adopted to the Kenyan education system. So they don't know any other education system, rather the Kenyan education system. So they are qualified. So they went up to universities, but they are not given that chance or an opportunity. The law is very clear, but the issue is who are implementing. So some of the government arms.
So you're saying there's a gap, especially when it comes to implementation of the law. And we'll come back to Muyomba, and you'll tell us about some of those the holes that are in the law about the refugees not being implemented fully. Perhaps to Gilbert, you also have an experience as a refugee. So
yes, what I would add to what my colleague Jean-Paul has just said, for us refugees, because I'm also a refugee, is that it all starts by the policy, the law, the government. I've been in Kenya for more than 21 years. So anyway, I've experienced a lot. Refugees have been seeking for this, what people are talking about right now, given a chance to kind of work and add to the economic of this country also. Because, refugees have been there, neglected for a very long time, not being given a chance to kind of work and also contribute to what they're supposed to contribute in regard to this country. So we've been advocating for this as refugee-led organizations and also as a Relon platform, at least for refugees to be given a chance to work. We have so many people on the ground, let's say everywhere, in the camps and then in the urban areas, longing to kind of work, earn a living, and also pay tax to the government in order to contribute to the economy of this country. But it has not been that easy. Let me give you an example. We have refugees maybe who came from different, let's say Congo, Burundi, Sudanese. A refugee just came as a driver. Let's say a driver, as simple as a driver. But this refugee is being taken to Kakuma refugee camp, to Dadaab. And back home used to drive. Who maybe want to be given a space, a place, let's say in urban setup, whereby his profession would work better. But this person is being taken to the camp according to the law. To the camp there is no cabs, there is no cars for this person to kind of use so that he can at least be self-reliant. So these kind of examples are many when it comes to refugees. So it's all about understanding what the refugees want. What would they request for the government so that at least the government could understand. Refugees have been, decisions have been taken far away where refugees could not been included in the decision making. Because, listening to the refugees' opinion would be the first thing, before, coming up with any laws or policy in regard to Refugee Act. But this has not been there. And I think this also contributed a lot in this neglect of refugees to at least being given this platform. I've been here for more than 20 years. Right now, I'm a chairman of an organization. I pay people salaries. I earn also. So how did it happen?
Okay, thank you so much, Gilbert. That was quite an extensive one. But just to get back to Muyomba, we've seen the law has been mentioned. What are some of these loopholes that make it quite strenuous, especially for the refugees, to be included economically when it comes to Kenya?
I will not highlight a lot of loopholes, because I do not believe there are many loopholes in the law. But I'll echo what one of our panelists has mentioned, that the biggest challenge is the goodwill. Because you can have good laws. Kenya has one of the best laws in Africa. But then, where is the goodwill? Are we ready? Forget even our leadership. Forget about our politicians. Are citizens ready to see refugees get jobs? A quick assessment is that is a very difficult question to be answered by most Kenyans, because most Kenyans will tell you, we are also suffering. So if there's a job opportunity, which criteria are you going to use to allocate the job to a refugee? However, I'm trying to strike a balance. I also say that means we need not go far. Other jurisdictions have struck the balance where refugees have a platform to work. There are many refugees who, when you meet them, they'll tell you, in this and this country, the environment is more conducive. Some of our refugees who are resettled outside this country, they all have access to work, meaning, and I think if I'm to mention just one, Miss Oman, who won election in the US, she was a refugee here in Kenya. For 4 years she was here, and when she went to the States, she had a platform. The biggest challenge for me is the goodwill. As it's been said, there are very many refugees who are studying. I've also interacted with some refugees who are professionals, who are lecturers. Then, now I think it's even more difficult. So I think a lot of advocacy is required by agencies, the government, to understand that it's actually to the advantage of a state or a government to allow refugees to work. Why? Because these are skills that we can gain from. Kenya is believed to have been doing very well yesteryears when we had an influx of refugees from Uganda, and most of them are known to have been very good teachers in schools, and they were employed. So now I think there's a mindset. I think people tend to assume that refugees are a problem. They are not. Some of our refugee friends, because I've interacted with quite a number, are very resourceful and very intelligent and very sharp. The gentleman speaking here has explained his own story. 20 years later, he's able to lead an organization. And that is when there is no sufficient support. Now you can imagine if there was support. I know of refugee organizations that have done wonders. They've organized functions. The refugees have churches. They have schools, despite the harsh environment. If you go to the Dadaab camp, for example, when I visited the Dadaab camp, I found some refugees who were able to run businesses, multi-million businesses, but most of them are doing it illegally. Why are they doing it illegally? Just because we are not ready to accept. If you go to Italy, there are many businesses being carried out by refugees. But if you ask them, are you able to show us the legal documents? They have none. Which means they are prone to abuse. Because if agencies, go around checking around for the compliance, they find they have not in compliance. So what happens? They are arrested. What happens after arrest? Some have to solicit some bribes to be released. Those are the challenges. But working, we have refugees who are very competent. So what is the way forward? For me, I think I don't want to blame the government. I want to, transfer the blame to the citizens. Our citizens are not well empowered. Our citizenry, we do not understand the plight of refugees, and that's why we are yet to support them. Once our people are sensitized on the plight of refugees and what we are likely to gain, I believe we are likely to encourage, support, and probably push our government to allow this kind of platform and legal regime to support work. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe just to tackle a little bit on what you have said about how probably the local people are seeing refugees like they are burden than people who can add up value or, economically to what is already here. But I was wondering, like, coming now to our current situation, like the crisis that we are facing around the world in Kenya with coronavirus. we are wondering what is happening on the side of refugees and economically, actually, because we guess probably there are so many things happening, and maybe Anne can respond to that since she's also working closely with refugees. And what are the things that you're doing as a leader to at least help refugees to overcome these difficult moments?
Okay, thank you again. I think I will speak in the context of exactly what we do as an organization, because we have a program for female domestic workers. Because when you talk about employment, we are likely to focus a lot on the formal employment, whereas we have informal employment, which is equally affected by the status of being a refugee or a migrant worker. So in this context, we work with female domestic workers. And in Nairobi, we call them mamafuas. These are women who just go outside an estate and look for an opportunity to get in and wash clothes. And in the context of COVID-19 particularly, we noticed that there are women who could not, of course, the fact that the only thing they do is the menial job of washing clothes. Many of them could not access those homes anymore, and of course the fact that they are not Kenyans and they don't have the status to allow them access other social support. We noticed that majority of them could not get the cash transfer that the government was giving and other stakeholders. And we had a specific scenario where I was asked by an organization that was giving cash transfer to vulnerable people groups, and I gave my database of around 600 mamafuas. And many of them could not access the cash transfer just because they did not have the documents that qualifies them to be Kenyans. So, for example, they were supposed to give ID and Safaricom registered number for M-Pesa transfers. And so they couldn't qualify just by that quick criteria. And so that's why I noticed the level of vulnerability that women who are refugees, but also not in the formal economy. They are just doing the casual jobs. A group of Congolese refugees, especially around Kasarani, I had a sitting with them, but just to discuss possibilities of their engagement. And they say that because of that kind of sidelining where they are not able to access such resources, they had to resort into hawking. So they get to Githurai, they get watermelon, they slice them, put them in a bucket, and they have to walk kilometers every day, just looking for somebody who can buy that one piece of watermelon for them to be able to earn a living. And of course, what would happen? They would get arrested because they don't have masks. The money they get is so little to buy a mask or to even have sanitizer, So that's what now our organization we have been doing, getting them sanitizers, getting them, face masks and soap. So at least as they move around, they feel confident they can be able to knock those homes and access and sell their watermelon. The other thing is that as they tried to do their small businesses inside the homes, they also get sexually violated. So a few of them, those who access the homes, people are now at home. Even men who worked in their offices are now working at home. So you get in a homestead and you're given a laundry to wash. After the washing, you're told, before I pay you, let's get to the bedroom and do the other job. So she's torn between, I have no any other job I can do in this country apart from this washing. I have gotten a chance to wash. I am torn between 500 shillings or 300 shillings and a sexual encounter with my boss. My children have slept hungry. There's nothing else I can do. And they will just undress and they have sex. Forced sex, of course, that is rape, And they'll get their 300 shillings at the cost of their dignity just to put food on the table for their children. So I am concerned, we are talking about employment. But you see, at the end of the day, it's not just that official job, that white-collar job. It's what you do on a daily basis for us to bring food on the table. So I've looked at the coronavirus and pandemic and how it has shrunk our economic space for everyone. So if a Kenyan woman is complaining and struggling to put food on the table, who has probably some piece of land which they legally own, they have had a business which they legally have, they have rent. What about this refugee woman who cannot get formal employment, who cannot, who has no piece of land, who has no legal business? So their economic space actually has shrunk. And the other case scenario that was quite pathetic is that some women I talked to, they have this watermelon, and of course they have no, the health. Is this what you call the health certificate? The food handling certificate that you require for you to run and sell food. And so some of them get arrested by the kanjo because you're hawking food. And this is the only thing that they have to do. So they will go hawking and they're arrested. The packet of watermelon is carried away, or the vitenge. You see, especially the Congolese refugees, women will go selling vitenges and all that, and they'll be arrested. And the bunch of the vitenge is taken away. Their bucket of watermelon is taken away. And here they are, they have nothing to take home. And of course, some of them would calculate how much they make in a watermelon. It's barely 60 shillings, So if you have to make like 100 shillings, you have to really work hard, walk long distances, to sell a piece of melon so that you can complete, you can complete the bucket and at least earn something. They'll go taking tomatoes, package them, sell them. When they meet with the kanjos, they're arrested, So all they have sold for the day is taken away. They have lost the capital because you see they have to go to the wholesalers and bargain. So they lose the entire, including the capital and the profit they made for the day. So they are taken back again. So those are the kind of women I'm talking about. And so coronavirus has affected all of us. But I think the women who are refugees are affected a million times.
Okay. Yeah. So perhaps Gilbert, and also I'll come back to Jean-Paul. When you hear such stories about the refugees happening to such, what comes to your mind? Do you think you're being safe? Are you safe when it comes to economically?
In fact, we are not safe when it comes to socioeconomic aspects. So that's why I've been saying that for a very long time refugees have been suffering. But we are happy now that people have realized that, even the government, and then everyone have started talking about it, and then trying to work on what is supposed to be done in order to at least empower these refugees, give them some spaces. So we've been seeing that now, that at least we hope that things will improve very soon, as it was worse during the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's say last year, as Africana, we were overwhelmed with refugees coming to us asking for help, support. Not only refugees, even locals, because we do not segregate or just serve refugees. We serve both refugees and then also locals. They came in numbers. We had to kind of write some letters to UN and then other organizations to try to find a way of supporting these refugees. And then I think this COVID-19 pandemic was kind of awaken, was just like an alarm to refugees. This institution working for refugees, even the UNHCR, because the situation was worse to the level that everyone started at least acting towards supporting refugees, and then they came to realize, there was a gap somewhere. That's when even this organization realized the importance of refugee-led organizations, CBOs on the ground, because there was this gap between these organizations and then the refugees. During the COVID-19, by the time refugees came in numbers to CBOs, that's when other organizations realized, no, there was a gap somewhere, so they start now working with refugee-led organization in providing services to refugees, and then it worked perfectly. It really worked perfectly. I can say right now we are kind of in harmony now. Refugees are RLOs and then NGOs in supporting the refugees.
Okay. Yeah, perhaps when you talk about refugees, you can't fail to mention the UNHCR. And the UNHCR also looks into a sustainable livelihood and also working in collaboration with, you mentioned about the CBOs and those that are on the ground. Perhaps, Jean-Paul, you worked in a couple of organizations. How has that been so far? And how effective has it been?
Yeah, thank you so much. Maybe I'll just add on what Mr. Gilbert said. So it's very unfortunate. First and foremost, the whole conversation is around securitization of refugees. So it's tied to that. And as Muyomba also mentioned, so there is an understanding that needs to be done, a sort of sensitization back to the host community so that they can understand who is a refugee exactly and what they go through, as the book is very clear, Try My Shoe, so that you can understand what I go through. Once you understand, you will not be there to judge me. Rather, you'll be there to get to understand where can I help. So when it comes to cautioning the refugees, as my sister said, indeed, it was only refugees who've been left alone on their own. So we did not see any presence of, let's say, INGOs at that time, as Gilbert also mentioned. So it was refugee-led organizations trying to support their own people. So they were nowhere to be seen. Even just simple messages on what is happening around the world in terms of COVID-19. So it was refugee-led organization taking lead, cautioning their people. And when it comes to communication, so most of the refugees could not access information easily because of some victimization and also the documents. As she mentioned, like majority of refugees are not registered on M-Pesa platform, which is could easily help them to get the cash transfers she has mentioned. But they were much more left out. So when it comes to UNHCR,
do you think it was done deliberately to be left out?
I would not want to say they've done it deliberately or not, simply because I don't work for UNHCR. So I wish they were here so that they could respond to that. And the good thing is that, yes, at least now refugees have waken up, and some of the INGOs are in support of localization so that we speak together. Let us bring the refugees on board, because you cannot speak on my behalf, yet I'm still alive. So give me an opportunity, we sit on table, we rectify where did we go wrong. And refugees can also give solutions to problems that are facing ourselves. So therefore, we are also appealing either to UNHCR and other government agencies that give the refugees a platform where they can express their concern. So in terms of decision-making tables and policy-making processes, we are not consulted. You make policies that are not in our favor because we are not part and parcel of that discussion. But if you are part of the discussion, probably we could even find solutions to some of the problems that are affecting refugees. So we anticipated during COVID when, unless maybe someone would tell me how many like local CBOs that supported the refugees, but rather majority of the RLOs that are working, especially in urban, they provided support to both the refugees and host community at the same time. And that one is in record. Because there is that assumption that refugees are receiving support from the UNHCR. For heaven's sake, refugees are not even, especially the urban, they don't receive any support from UNHCR or the government of Kenya, apart from the documentation. That's all.
But I'm just wondering, thank you so much for what you have shared. I'm just wondering, is there a way, still ILOs and UNHCR, together with the Kenyan government, can restore or rectify some of the things that has been done since the break of coronavirus up to now? Because I guess, as you have said, let us come around the table and discuss. So is there a way we can rectify and at least improve the situation as organizations that support both refugees and host communities?
Yeah, thank you so much, Joel. There is still that opportunity because it's not late. So it's just a matter of changing that narrative of taking advantage of refugees or subjecting refugees to become, or the refugee-led organization, as beneficiaries and not equal partner. That is the challenge that is there. We are not competing with anyone, but we are just asking that we be given a platform to speak what bothers us or to speak our concern on behalf of our community. So there's nothing else. If we are brought on the same table, decision making, like in the URPN, it's just a matter of accepting refugees to come on board so that they can also contribute on matters affecting them.
I can feel that Fed has also something to add. Please, Fed, just talk.
I just, it's very hard to speak on behalf of an absentee person. Neither is there a need to do it.
Yeah.
But I think it's good to put things in perspective that it will be misinformation if we, appear to allow some statement to pass through like there's nothing done by UN or government to refugees. Some of this, in fact, let me go back to the issue of M-Pesa, because that's the first time you raised it.
Yes.
Refugees who are not covered or who do not have those services of M-Pesa, it obviously has nothing to do with UNHCR. It has all to do with a technicality in their documentation. Unlike us who have ID cards that once you get an ID, it's long life, it's for life, right? Unfortunately, refugees' lifespan stay here is presumed to be limited. And so when a refugee receives an identification document, especially the government document, which is equivalent to the ID that we receive, the lifespan of that document is 5 years. And this document can be renewed. Unfortunately, upon renewal, the refugee will be issued with a new identification number. So let's assume this person had an ID. Upon expiry of the ID, services are automatically terminated by Safaricom, which means getting the next number is extremely challenging. Because you can imagine, as a citizen, can you imagine I have 2 ID numbers and you want to go and transact? It's a bit challenging. So a lot of advocacy, information sharing, sensitization is needed across board so that people understand the plight of refugees. And in terms of, are we doing enough? It can never be enough. There is no country that has ever done enough. What is there is that there are challenges. There are limited resources. For example, let's address the issue of COVID. We were all struck by COVID. People lost jobs. Businesses went down. People closed businesses. And that I'm just referring to citizens. Refugees' challenges will be worse more because already they're not on a level platform.
Yeah.
So when we look back and try to assess what could be done. Probably beyond our control. Probably more resources are needed. Probably, as colleagues are suggesting, maybe more interaction is needed. But obviously, we will not say nothing is being done. I think these organizations are trying their best, but as expected, it's never enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned much of it, and perhaps just to go back to the issue of United Nations now, the United Nations General Assembly. They have a 2018 roadmap to empower the refugees that lead to productive lives through the Global Compact of Refugees, of which she mentioned in terms of the introduction and the background, which was rolled by United Nations General Assembly in 2018. So how effective is this program? Because we've seen several programs being rolled out. We also have a collaborative program between UNHCR and ILO, which for the inclusive market system aims, which aims at promoting market system development, especially for MSMEs. So how practical will this be when it comes to implementation?
Thank you. Of course, I'll repeat, I restrict myself. I will not speak on behalf of anybody, not even UNHCR, not government, but means being in the sector, we know the challenges, but I'll only highlight one. And it's a common challenge. It's resources. She runs an organization, they all run organizations. The biggest challenge is resources. Because we can come up with very good plans. If they are not matched up with resources, it will remain a good plan. And but we've made milestones as a country. We've made milestones. 20 years ago, we particularly the two colleagues will attest to you that there were, if any, very few refugee-led organizations. So right now, there are quite a number. We had a conference about 2 weeks ago for refugee-led organization in Nairobi, and there were representation from quite a number of organizations. So we are making progress. Refugees are being empowered. Refugees are taking their rightful position, and we are seeing amazing results. But our biggest challenge is resources. And I believe that is beyond us, beyond government, beyond UNHCR, and that's why there is always calls for support across the world so that we get more and more support. But progress is being done. I think it's also good to note that just a few, I think the last Olympic, I'm not sure about this Olympic, we've seen refugees being, Kenya sending, yes.
Participating actually, yeah.
We've seen refugee-led activities out there. I mentioned about churches, schools. Progress is being made, but more needs to be done. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. You talked about progress, and I think in the first discussion, we'll leave it at that. We'll come back to more discussion when it comes to livelihood and economic inclusion of refugees. We'll be right back, but now I'm taking you back to Liboy, who are going to perform.
Yes. All right, let's go. I don't wanna waste my time believing that it feels like fire burning through my skin. Hey, burning through my skin. Hey, burning through my skin. And it's this desire, and it hurts like fire, and it feels like fire burning through my skin, feels like fire. I don't wanna walk away from this. I don't wanna waste my time believing that it feels like fire burning through my.
Wow, that was amazing. Komora, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yes. Back to our conversation. I think we have tried to talk a lot, try to highlight some of the issues that is happening and some of the important points coming to economics of refugees. But we also have in mind what the Kenyan government has just announced recently on the closure of the main two camps in Kenya, Dadaab and Kakuma, by next year, 2022. And we are wondering now around the economy inclusion of refugees and the closure of the camp, how the Kenyan government, or how are we going to face this reality? Maybe I can address my issue, this question to Anne. You can just respond on that question.
Thank you. Again, I think this is going to be a very tough situation. Because we appreciate that, refugee issue is not something that started yesterday, neither is it going to end tomorrow. So closure will automatically lend us so many households affected deeper into vulnerability. So my quick opinion is that if the camps are closed, as the government has suggested and has planned, is going to bring a crisis, a refugee crisis, not just in Kenya, globally. That's my position.
Thank you so much. Maybe your point of view, Fed, on that.
I will just try to give a legal perspective to the same question.
Yeah.
I'll start by saying it's very unfortunate that our government is making yet another attempt to repatriate refugees, which is obviously against the law. International law, specifically the 1951 UN Convention relating to the status of refugees, prohibits forceful return of refugees. The Refugee Act of 2006, laws of Kenya, specifically prohibits that action under Section 18, which says that a refugee who is in this country because he's fleeing persecution cannot be taken back to where he's or she likely to face persecution that he or she fled from. So in the past, we've had similar attempts by government, and they have all been quashed by the courts. And of course, I must also say that that directive, which was announced by the Interior Cabinet Secretary Dr. Matiang'i in March, was also challenged, or rather has been challenged in court. And of course, we look forward to a positive review, at least on the fact that it's illegal to force refugees back. And number two, we are also wondering, even if it was possible, is this the right time to marshal numbers and attempt to take refugees back during the pandemic? In fact, just last month, in commemoration of the World Refugee Day, the Mount Kenya University, in partnership with other institutions, including Kituo cha Sheria, which is a leading NGO, alongside others, including Career and Professional Development Institute, organized a World Refugee Day Forum. And that was the theme, where students across and other partners were discussing, is it the right time to move people during pandemic? Obviously, it's not the right time. So what we are saying is, one, it's illegal. Two, even if it was, still it's not the right time. And it's unfortunate that I think we have not learned from the numerous court cases that are documented. From my background, I feel it may not see day of light, at least not in Kenya. Kenya is a law-abiding country. Yeah.
Just to be on the same point on the legal perspective, because I've asked this question before on previous panelists, and perhaps I'll just throw it to you. Don't you think Kenya has a right reason to do it? Because Kenya, the Interior Cabinet Secretary, was citing the reasons for in terms of security. Do you think that's a valid reason?
I'll first of all start by giving an opinion that has already been given by the court. Justice Majanja, in an almost similar case in the previous years, has clearly stated in the judgment that while the government has a right to return persons who they feel are a security threat, that's provided for in the law, they cannot, in blanket way, condemn all refugees as a security threat and take them back. That's one. Number two, it is the duty of government to provide security, not just to refugees, but to everyone, including our citizens. It's not the duty of a refugee or citizen to provide security for themselves. Why? Because Kenyans and every person within are expect to be law-abiding citizens who are paying taxes, which are then used partially to provide security. Now, if there is a security threat, say from 10 persons, let's say it's at the camp, means let the law follow course. For example, let them be arrested, let them be prosecuted, let them be taken through the process. But you see, the only issue here is that government claims that is a security threat, no evidence, no sufficient evidence is provided, and then we now blanket all refugees to be a security threat. Our position is, while government has the right, let the security apparatus perform their duties, which is isolate the threats, the individual threats, so that we leave the other persons who are genuinely in Kenya to at least have some decency of life as asylum seekers and refugees in this country.
Okay, thank you so much, Bob. Just to bring Gilbert in the same line of thought, he's talked about. You're talking about the closure of camps, and also what impact will it have when it comes to economic inclusion and livelihood, especially to the refugees. You've worked with them, and now what do you think will become of refugee-led organizations such as the one that you're leading?
Yeah, thank you for that question. In fact, when it comes to that issue, when the government started bringing this up, refugees within the community, within the area, within Nairobi, were having different opinion. Because some of them started being harassed, even by the the nationals. Others were telling them that if the government doesn't want you, we are just waiting for some time, and then you guys are leaving. So this directly brought a conflict, started bringing a conflict. While before that, there was no conflict. In fact, Kenyans are very good people, very, very, very good people. And Kenya is a very unique country when it comes to hospitality. I'm happy here in Kenya. Let me tell you the truth. I'm happy. I'm secure. I feel that when given space, opportunity, I can grow and then maybe help many people. Refugees. Anyway, that's the sentiment of all refugees, not only in the camps and then in urban setups. But when this started, things started, so refugees were there was that fear now. Fear, not only fear from the government, also fear from the local Kenyans also. Because some of them, very few of them, started also showing this kind of thing. So I think as refugees, we are there waiting for maybe decision from the government and then the UNHCR, but we think that it's not the right time to do this, because not all refugees are criminals and are the same. Our lawyer here just put it. So I think they should deal with the criminals and then leave the others. And it would also, if Kenyan government maybe decide to make sure that this decision, this plan goes on, I think it will also tarnish the reputation of a Kenyan government, because they were very good in before. Kenya is a very good country, and then everyone applauds what Kenya are doing when it comes to refugees. And then spoiling it at this point, I think it's not worth it. That's what we may say. It's not worth it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Maybe when it comes to camp closure, let me go back to what Muyomba said. If you remember very well, in the number 19 petition of the 2014 by Justice Majanja, so the government was unable to prove beyond reasonable doubt, especially when it comes to the element of security, connecting the refugee, the crimes that are happening with the refugees. So it's not a good idea. By the way, Kenya is one of the best countries that are very receptive and accommodative, especially to refugees. So the government, I would not say, does not have issue as such. So sometimes when, someone in a very powerful position talks of something, because I remember even in 2012, when there was a statement, and I kept on saying that statement was not good. A statement was issued by someone very prominent in the government, linking refugees and the terror attacks that were happening without having enough evidence. Because as Ferrado said, yes, the government is very respectful of the law, so they are abiding of the law. And I believe when the matter is in the court, there is no need of speculating or talking more about it. So we are just waiting, and I think there'll be a very positive judgment that will happen, which we are hoping that it will go in favor of both refugees and also the government at the same time. So when it comes to refugee ourselves, we don't feel safe at all, because the moment when camps are closed, you don't feel like you'll be safe when you're in urban, because a refugee is still a refugee. Refugee is not a permanent status. When you try to explain that to some of our good friends that we have lived with, some of them, they wonder, like, why is the government taken these drastic measures to close the camp. And we have never seen you doing anything wrong. So they believe refugees are people like any other person. So, and also Kenya being, and it's on record, that Kenya being part of the signatories and also at the UN Security Council, a member. So I don't think if it will be legal to just repatriate people forcefully, which in the 1951 Convention and also in the 206 Act, the Refugee Act, which talks about the non-refoulement. So I don't think if it is, and again, even if they were right to repatriate people, so I don't think if it is the right time,
Okay.
especially during this pandemic. So it's really horrible.
Okay.
And you can feel even the atmosphere in refugee community. Some of them are being traumatized. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Just to get back to Anne, perhaps you've worked with these women, you've worked with them, you've seen their challenges, you've seen them grow, you've seen the limited opportunities that they get. Now, what becomes of Kenya in terms of benefit when we embrace economic inclusion? What will become of Kenya? What kind of Kenya will we have?
Of course, if we are able to embrace people from, let's say the refugees that are already in Kenya today, I think we'll have a very good Kenya. Because I look at these women, the kind of skills they have. They are very, very good skills. They have wonderful skills. You look at some of even the Kenyan tailors, you go to Nairobi Textile, you get charged very highly to make a cloth. But it doesn't still look as beautiful as that one, that's made by that Congolese lady. So I tend to think that we just need to accept that the fabric is so huge. Everyone can have a bit of it. So, the fact that this refugee woman can walk with a piece of watermelon and someone buys, it means that, there's a market out there for everyone. There is space for everyone. So we just need to look at what is it that this, the skill that and the opportunities that are presenting to us, and include them into our planning and ensure that at least they live in a dignified manner. Because at Center for Livelihood, we say that we are advocating for employment in dignity, so that the little that you're doing, do it in a dignified manner. Let that woman be able to access that market safely. Let that woman be able to access her employer safely. Let that woman work in a safer space, in a homestead. Because it means that if she's coming to my home and I'm giving her work, let's say cleaning job, it means that I needed someone to clean that laundry. So why should a Kenyan lady feel denied? She was not available. So the fact that there's this lady who is very available and willing to work in my house, to clean my chores, to do my chores, and by the way, they are very kind. They do their work. They pour their energy because this is what they can do. Because for them, every time we talk to these women, they say that whatever I find to do, I do it well because I don't know if tomorrow is available. So they pour themselves into it and they do it. So why don't we look at ways of making their working environment better for them? Because all they want is to put food on the table for their children. So let's give them opportunity. Let's create an environment where they can thrive. Let's give them an opportunity where they can have meaningful livelihoods so that they don't have to be harassed by police out there. They don't have to be harassed by the kanjo out there. They don't have to be harassed by their employers at home. Let them feel safe. That's all they need. And once they make that bread, put it on their table, then we can claim to have a safer, an inclusive economy. So for me, I look at it that the fabric is big, the cake is big. Let those who are within our borders, let them have a share of it, regardless how small, how big it is, So that's what I would say about that.
If I may add to what she just said, is that look at it this way. L'Africana employs both refugees and then local Kenyans. And when today the government carry on with this plan that refugees must go, and then L'Africana is no longer there, what will become of these employees who are Kenyans? So you see, it's just like an issue of capitalizing on the human resources. Let the government look at refugees as resources, not liabilities. I think if it goes that way, I think the government has no reason to fear, because we are resources, not liability. We work, we earn. We also contribute to the economy of this country. That's when, even in my location where I am, I have so many friends. We have so many Kenyan friends, just because we help them, we also serve them. So look at it in this way, and then you'll find that there is no reason to fear that refugees are liability. We know and we are convinced that we are a resource which the government of Kenya would also use for its economic growth.
Yeah, thank you so much. Maybe just to add on what my colleague has just said, I think even as we are seated here, there's a lot that I believe Ferrado has learned from me, and there's much more that I learned from him. He used to be my boss at one point. And I'm very proud to say it. So the kind of treatment that you give to someone today, so you don't expect to receive much more than what you gave. So it is always good whenever we have this kind of conversation, like refugees are burdens to the government or either to the host community. And you tend to ask someone, do you give a free house to refugees? No, they pay rent like any other individuals in this country. So you share or buy commodities. Refugees are not given those commodities for free. They also buy, which means they contribute in one way or another into the Kenyan economy. They are not contributing into their country of origin's economy at the moment where they are here. So there's a great potential in refugee community that the government and its people can tap and benefit much more. So I believe if refugees were given that space to breathe, because in terms of even free movement, so we are somehow losing a lot as the government. It's somehow losing a lot. If you give refugees that free movement, they would do a lot and they would contribute to the Kenyan economy, provided you subject them to the same law that Kenyans are being subjected to. Like, pay as you earn. I will not pay when I'm not earning. But if I'm working and earning, definitely I'll pay back or give back to the society. So you cannot give what you don't have. So, and the other thing, when we talk about the informal sector, especially our women who goes out there, they are being subjected now to more torture and also GBV cases. So simply because they don't have a choice. And in our security apparatus, at least there should be a kind of equal treatment, whereby if is a refugee whom he or she, her rights are violated, you treat them equally. But we have in some cases whereby if a refugee reports a kind of case like I've been raped, they are not given that much weight, especially by our security apparatus. So simply because the action was done by maybe, or the perpetrators, by the people who tend to be of your side. But if it were a refugee, on the other side now becomes a perpetrator, it could be another story. So in every community, we have bad elements and good elements. As Muyomba said, if someone has committed a crime, the law is very clear that should be taken before the corridors of justice and be punished in accordance with the law. So now the last one, when it comes to Class M permits, some of those criteria that they are putting there or setting, which are much more of higher standard that a refugee cannot meet. So if you tell someone to apply a Class M permit before you come to the country where you want to go and work, a refugee found himself here. So you want to tell this refugee to go back to the country of origin and apply, then come back. So in that way, we are losing also a lot. At least they should try maybe to differentiate between a foreigner and a refugee in order to ease the issuance of Class M permit so that refugee can be allowed to work freely. And we are very happy maybe if this one is signed into law, the 2019 bill, at least with the refugee ID card, someone will be allowed to work freely without having gone through all this process.
I think even to think more politically, the government has already invested a lot to support the refugee community. So why should you support so much for long, then just dump, your effort in the air? So the fact that you've already given a lot of support, that goodwill should just, should translate to a more sustainable solution rather than just closing the camps. Because you see, closing the camp does not change the political environment with, in not just in Kenya, but in Africa. So if, for example, the cause of conflict in Congo that is not dealt with, even if you close the camp here, it doesn't mean that tomorrow they'll not be here. So instead of closing and waiting tomorrow for it to happen, why don't we as a country use the lesson that you've learned to have a more progressive direction? So that you're not saying, we've napping this baby for long, the baby is not growing, so we dump. So tomorrow we still have the same case of a baby. So we still get back to the same bracket. So why don't we've already used resources, basically, as a country. We've invested a lot. So why don't we come up with a more progressive approach to this? Yeah.
Okay, perhaps just to bring Muyomba, as we are almost concluding actually. You've been in the legal profession and you've dealt much when it comes to policies of refugees and everything else. Now, how best can we deal or approach the economic inclusion? Because we've heard about the integration, especially the refugee integration. How best can the economic inclusion be brought?
Thank you. So the issue of economic integration is quite sensitive. It's also closely related to politics. Because let's take an example of the camp, the Dadaab camp, which has, actually in terms of population, Dadaab is the third largest city in Kenya. That means the numbers of persons within that camp are more than many towns in this country. So now, let's assume we are now saying you can as well as, go out there and apply for jobs. As well-meaning as that suggestion will be, it will definitely create a backlash, a very serious one, because the millions of Kenyans will naturally rise up and now turn on the refugees and blame them as the problem for their joblessness. So, as I said earlier, I do not believe that what we have is a legal lacuna. It is rather an issue of information and sensitization and advocacy. Because if today I went for an interview and then I meet 5 more refugees and we are also 5 Kenyans, chances are the possibility of me getting the job are minimized. And if I miss the job, there is a higher possibility of me blaming the refugee or the foreigner. So it's a sensitive issue. Jobs are very sensitive. And we've seen uprisings out of the country, in other countries. So being a very sensitive issues, politics are involved, communities have to be involved. This issue must be discussed with some sobriety so that first the citizens accept that our friends who are neighbors are human beings who also deserves livelihood. And I really want to appreciate the organizers of this forum, because you are bringing this to the fore. It is such programs that we need more of across board, so that people start appreciating the pain one is suffering. I want to give an example of countries where refugees are resettled to. And my colleague here mentioned it. Kenya invests heavily on education for refugees, because refugees have a right to education in Kenya, and for sure they are taken through the education system, primary, secondary, and university. Then once they graduate, they will not get jobs. Then they apply for resettlement, and when lucky, they are absorbed in those countries. So when they go there, obviously we are losing a lot because we have invested, but then the people reaping the benefit are, foreign countries. So if sensitization is done, then we can now consider proper policies, which I do not believe are really lacking. They are not lacking. It's just that the goodwill is lacking, and the sensitivity of the issue, which is not a Kenyan problem per se. It's a problem in many countries that are not economically empowered. Yes, but I believe we are getting there. I think for starters, let's start by at least allowing the refugees to work without harassment, because there are some menial jobs that they do, like what our organization is doing. If I want to be a barber, let me do my work. I don't have to be harassed, as he has mentioned. Let's start baby steps, so that by the time we are getting there, we are all together in this. And finally, our politicians, they play a major role in our country by leading the discussion. So if a politician stands in the pulpit and says, these refugees are terrorists, that night, many people will sleep out of their homes because of fear. If our leaders branded these people as refugees, then their chances are they are. If they are branded as terrorists, chances are they are. So if we watch our what we say, and we become more considerate, policies will fall in place. And finally, I think he also mentioned the refugee bill. Once passed, it will be a step again in the right direction. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, you earlier on pointed on citizenry as an inclusion plan, and also you mentioned about information and sensitization, and about the blame game. Perhaps just to get to the experience of Gilbert, you mentioned you've been here more than 20 years. Yes. So how has your experience been so far?
Yeah, as I said earlier, is that Kenyans are very good people. That's one I may attest to that. And the experience on my side had been quite good. But anyway, some of the small things only lacking on the way when it comes to policy, when it comes to access to some of the services. Yes, so those have been there. But I think now things are kind of improving. Currently, things are kind of improving. When it comes to security, I can say within the Nairobi, refugees are quite secure. I may say that. What refugees are fearing of is what our lawyers here said. Is something which will make the citizen turn against refugees. Those kind of calls when it comes to politicians, that's what refugees fear, because we all see what is happening in other countries, and that is very dangerous. So that's the biggest fear of each and every refugees living in urban setup. And I think that's what I can say. It's a very sensitive issue that I think the government and then the politician would kind of watch, so that and what they say could not make the population turn against the refugees. And yet we've been living in a very peaceful. In fact, I have so many friends, Kenyans. I was supported by Kenyans in many ways. I can say in many ways. I'll not have been or get to where I am right now, if it was not for Kenyans. And then these examples are many in many areas. Look at the lady here. What they are doing, they are Kenyans supporting refugees. And there are many examples outside there of good Kenyans, many Kenyans supporting refugees. I've lived that. When I came to Kenya, I was given, a sukuma wiki place, to kind of farm a little garden for free by Kenyans. So I think refugees has no, we cannot say that Kenyans are not very good people. They are good, but only the politicians should kind of watch what they say, because only this can make the population.
Yes, maybe just to tackle that, since that has been mentioned by many of you, saying like there is that need to sensitize people at different levels so that they can know who is a refugee. Because once politicians stand and say, they're all criminals, it's just come across and, there is that cold war between refugees and host communities. But if we have to come up with that approach, especially with the government starting, because that's where the issue starts from, how do you think we can go with it? Because who is going to train the government on what to say about refugees or how to portray refugees publicly? So I'm wondering what approach or measures we can come up with that.
Maybe if I may take over. Mm-hmm. I think it's a responsibility of each and everyone. Mm-hmm. So including the politicians, as other panelists have said earlier. So the kind of statement that you issue in public, it matters a lot. So there is also need of inclusion of refugees at all levels in policy making, so that they can also give you their story that can also be included in some of your discussions. When you go out there, we don't mean that refugees knows all, but involve refugees, learn more from refugees. Even ourselves, we would love to be in our own countries, whereby you have freedom of movement and so forth. But now, when you are in a foreign land, it becomes a little bit hard, even that freedom of expression, which is infringed and yet is in the Constitution, in the Bill of Rights, but you are denied. So, including the refugees on the platform in any discussion, it would really, really even empower the Kenyan citizens so that they get to learn a lot. How does the conflict start? And where does it lead you? In which situation do you find yourself? Like, for example, today, it's not each and every refugee who've been involved in conflict that is happening in our country of origin. But you found yourself a victim simply because of what politicians are out there saying and inciting people. But if they learn from the refugees, it could be a good step that we also have some kind of community sensitization forum among refugees and Kenyans, whereby we learn from each other. Because yes, today I might be supporting this one because of ABCD, but at the end of the day, it will lead me to somewhere else that I will no longer be in my own country. Yes. So you might find yourself today, you are in Uganda. So what will happen? And yet you've been laughing at the refugees. So that's why we refer again, try the refugee shoes. So let us come together and discuss.
Yes. So. I think I agree with what Paul is saying. And actually the reason I'm here is because one of the forum we were leading, funded by Urgent Action Fund Africa, was basically to bring the voices of female domestic workers who are urban refugees. And how did we do it? Simple. We do community-led, women-led conversations where these women come and share their stories. And that's why a woman, for example, who was sexually violated, who will not even tell their husband, but can have a safer space, where she can share her story. Of course, that story may not be made public because of protection concerns, but we have other stories that can be made public and people actually get to know. So I look forward, for example, where I would sit in such a forum here today, not with us experts, but with that Congolese refugee lady who sells watermelon, that lady who sells vitenge, that other refugee lady, and let them share their story. And let it be out there. I mean, let's hear their story and what they think should be done so that, we amplify their voices. So, because we say that at Center for Livelihood, we say that let these women and girls be at the center of their solutions, be providers of solutions. We know that they have, stories that can change the way policymakers think, so that we are not labeled as those NGOs that are just making noise. No, let's hear survivors, let's hear stories of resilience, informing policy. That is when we say, when one day, for example, we end a conversation and a lady was saying she went to Mama Lucy to deliver. And because she didn't have ID, she could benefit from, there's this Afia Linda Mama. As simple as that. Because she is a refugee, but she got pregnant with a Kenyan. All right? So the Kenyan is the father of the baby. So when she went to that hospital, all right, she told, you see, who is carrying the pregnancy? It's you. It's not your husband. So, and it's true. She's a refugee. She's carrying pregnancy. The pregnancy belongs to a Kenyan man. So, the fact that she's not a Kenyan, she can't get the Leader Mama cover. So it's as simple as that. So who is this baby? Is this a baby, a Kenyan? By virtue of birth, isn't it? So does that baby desire protection? It's true. So until that woman is seated where I'm seated today, and she shares her story, then the government will listen. So I'm trying to say, let's bring these stories from them themselves, like the way he's talking about his story. You see, a story is not a tale, it's a reality. It's true, you can touch, you can feel it. So let's bring these stories. Let's not get tired, Today we are having, try my shoe. Let's have another narrative that continuously amplifies the story of resilience, of suffering, of tribulation, of, all those stories. And let's pick from the basket of experiences of these refugees and say, yes, this is working for them. This is not working for them. Until we have done that, we'll just be talking about, what you're trying to do here and there. But it's neither there, it's not there. So let's get to where it pains. To the grassroots. Yes. Let's have those, those round tables. Not round tables. We have no tables in Kiambu, When I'm working with those migrant workers in Kiambu, when I'm working with those refugee women in Kasarani, in Kawangware, there's no table. We just sit around like this, and you hear their stories. How a pregnant woman who was selling a watermelon went round and, raped by a Kenyan man, and worried for the fact that she's vulnerable to the level that the only livelihood option she has is selling that watermelon. She would not have fallen into sexual violence. You see? So if that Mama Fua who went around, who is a Tanzanian or a Ugandan or a Sudanese, went around looking for a cleaning job, if she had another option for livelihoods, she would not have gotten to that level of vulnerability. So what we are saying is that let's hear their stories. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm persuaded to just make a contribution. Before I get back to a comment on what she said, I want to respond to the question, whose responsibility is it to, sensitize, train, advocate for these refugee rights? I think I'll borrow the words of the President of the Republic of Kenya, His Excellency Uhuru Muigai, he once told us that security starts with you and me. I think I'll use that similar connotation to say sensitization or advocacy or information sharing cannot be placed on one arm. Government cannot do it alone. International organization cannot come and do that alone. NGOs will not do it alone. Host community will not do it alone. Neither will refugee do it alone. Because should any one party run the show alone, it will naturally bring a conflict. So my take is that all these stakeholders must work together so that they walk the path together. And of course, it's everybody's responsibility to learn and get knowledge and learn more. But on her just comment she made, which is very interesting, of the case of a refugee mother giving birth at Pumwani, and she's not attended to because she's a refugee. I find that to be a very interesting scenario because children born in Kenya are all treated equal. And I do not know whether it's a case of negligence or ignorance, because any child born in Kenya is treated equally, be it of a refugee, a foreigner, or a citizen. However, this particular case has a father who is, according to her, a Kenyan, which then means this is a Kenyan child. And if it's a Kenyan child, then it means there is failure of parental responsibility. Because if you are expecting a child and you are not there to stand in for them, then you will not blame government. It's that you're exposing this minor to unnecessary burdens. Ideally, all you need is the submission of documents, probably NHIF, and all these things are catered for. And that's why we say people need to do more. These NGOs, CBOs, they need to do more. Some of these things is just about information and standing up for what is your right. After all, it's a right. Yeah.
And also maybe to support what Myomba just said, in terms of the family support, like there's a lot that the law protects the family, but when you compare with this narrative of camp closure, there's also another aspect of family division. You are denying other people's right to have a family, because we have seen quite a number of refugees who are married to Kenyans. So where do you place those families, especially the children who seem to be more vulnerable for what they did not ask for? Because you just came to this world and found yourself, one of my parents is a refugee. Very unfortunately, because yes, for a mother, it will be very hard. Let's say you want to repatriate them back without their children. That cannot be possible. What will happen? Even for responsible fathers, let's say, whether a responsible Kenyan parent will not allow this other parent to go with the child. So it's also a situation that we need to balance both.
I want to take a gender perspective into this debate, because I like what Bwana Wakili said here about, parental responsibility. But the truth of the matter, let's put the gender roles on the table. We have the productive and reproductive roles. The productive roles automatically goes much to the men. The work is to bring food win and bring, engage in a more productive activities like, employment and all that. But according to, the gender and desegregation of roles and responsibility, it's the work of women to nurture and care. So what will happen is that, and many of you will say, how many times do we see a man accompanying a woman to maternity? In Kenya and in Africa. I go to my husband is empowered. So he takes me to maternity. Yeah? But when I'm there, I find so many women walking alone. They labor alone, they scream alone, they deliver alone. Including to the day of discharge. They maneuver their pass.
Except some of us.
Except thank you.
So is it a matter of gender or negligence?
I want us to bring home
Yes.
is that yes, this refugee woman will get pregnant with a Kamau or Otieno or Nanjala or Awanjala or the other one. But the moment she gets pregnant, first of all, remember she is vulnerable because she is a refugee.
Yeah.
Remember that this man is likely to label her like, you just want security from me. So sometimes they even get to further exploitation. So by the time she's even getting to the level that she wants to deliver, she may find that she is all alone.
Yes.
So when she gets to the hospital and it's time to deliver, she may be required to produce the identity card,
Yes.
for the husband or the father. The father may be a runaway man. So, as much as there is that parental responsibility, again, she's left again to be the father and the mother. And then she is supposed to prove how this baby is supposed to be a Kenyan. How do you prove that?
Yeah.
So because of, the gender responsibilities, the gender roles basically placed on women and men, and further exposing women to other levels of vulnerability,
Exactly.
including sexual exploitation and abuse, and the status of a refugee now makes all this situation very complex. So that if she's pregnant, yes, the government has a responsibility to protect every child. It's true. But you actually have to provide documents that proves where are these documents? They're with a runaway husband or a spouse or a boyfriend.
Yeah, I'm seeing Minomba. Is there anything you want to contribute?
Most of them run away.
That seems, or if she puts it that way, then it makes sense.
Thank you.
So that now the issue here is documentation, which obviously you cannot force someone to surrender.
Exactly.
But then I think that's now where civil society comes in, so that organization like hers should be able to stand up and, and others and see what these gaps, how can they be filled. Some of the basic things, of course, these discussions are very sensitive and they can lead to further discussions. But when you think about it, and I agree with her on that. Let me just leave it at that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just maybe Gilbert, just to get back to you. You want to contribute something?
Yes.
Kindly.
I was looking at it as currently we are dealing with a case whereby there is this refugee, this lady. She was raped, got a first child, and raped again, got a second child. A month ago, she was raped with different people. She was raped by 5 men.
Oh my God.
And we took this lady to Mbagadi Hospital through NCCK referrals, and up to now, she's still under medication. The lady, she wants to commit suicide because she thinks that she's a curse to the humanity. So the hospital, what they did was to prevent another pregnancy on that. And then she went through some intensive surgeries, and then up to now she's within the community. We looked for another place where we could relocate her, but her situation is not good up to now because it's not, anyway, for her it's not normal for a human being to be raped 3 times. Anyway, look at it. So whenever, when she was talking and then bringing this up, I was seeing the picture of this lady. She's still young, but 2 kids, and then, so these things are there. Refugees are kind of being exploited in many ways. This lady, before she was raped with these 5 men, she used to work somewhere at a small company within the community. She was earning. She was not a burden to anyone. But now, she lost her job. She lost where she used to stay. She's now within the community, just expecting someone to support her. So anyway, situations are not that very good for some unfortunate refugees. Let me leave it at that level.
Yes, thank you so much. I think that's really sensitive to hear and to experiment, but this is a platform where we have, the opportunity to share those, stories, and thank you for bringing those stories, and we'll see how to amplify the voices of those people and stories from the grassroots. And thank you for also coming up with some practical examples that can help change the narrative and how refugees are portrayed, and also how they can be, included in the economically in refugee. We really thank you for your insight and input and comments and being with us. And we hope that our audience have really enjoyed our conversation today. At the same time, I'm taking this opportunity to also thank our partners, Anika Initiative, Refugee Poets, and GIZ for also making this possible. We are here because they have, support us. We thank you, and maybe we'll just call our artists for the last performance as we are closing this discussion. Thank you so much for your time.
Kila mara we watoka nyumbani kutafuta hela kile unacho imani, kutafuta ungama kila siku kujikasa, kutafuta ungama. Watoto watavanini kutafuta ungama kila siku kujikasa, kutafuta ungama. Ay, 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 ay. Sukuma sukuma mama usije ukachoka, itajipa mama usije ukachoka. Sukuma sukuma mama usije ukachoka, itajipa mama usije ukachoka. Ay 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 baba yele. Ay 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 ay. Kila mara we watoka nyumbani kutafuta hela kile unacho imani, kutafuta ungama kila siku kujikaza, kutafuta ungama. Haye, kutafuta ungama kila siku kujikaza, kutafuta ungama. Ay 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 ay. Sukuma sukuma mama usije ukachoka, itajipa mama usije ukachoka. Sukuma sukuma mama usije ukachoka, itajipa mama usije ukachoka. Ay 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 ay. Mama usichoke, halala usichoke, usichoke, usichoke. Itajipa, itajipa, itajipa mama yo, itajipa mama yo, usije ukachoka. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yelele mama, yelele mama, yelele mama, mama, yelele mama, yelele mama, yelele mama, yelele mama, yelele mama, mama, yelele mama. Mama, yelele It's another blessed day, smiley people passing my way, shining sun up in the sky, watching sunrise up in the highway. It's another blessed day, smiley people passing my way, shining sun up in the sky, watching sunrise up in the highway. Beautiful people you are my beautiful people. Beautiful people you are my beautiful people. What happened hivi pusa? Sisi what happened hivi pusa? What happened hivi pusa? Sisi what happened hivi pusa? Hey, hey. Oh, na 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 na. Hey, Kila siku ikipita, I don't wanna go back again. Na kila wiki ikipita, natamani kuwaona tena na tena. Kila mwezi ukipita, natamani muwe karibu nami. Na kila mwaka ukipita, wish everything that's happening evil. You are my beautiful people. You are my beautiful people. You are my beautiful people. Beautiful people you are. You are my beautiful people. What happened hivi pusa? Sisi what happened hivi pusa? What happened hivi pusa? Sisi what happened hivi pusa? Hey, okay. Beautiful you are. Let me hear you say beautiful you are. Let me hear you say beautiful we are. Oh no, it's beautiful we are. Sisi wote ni warembo, 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 warembo. Sisi wote ni vipusa, 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 vipusa. No, beautiful we are. Beautiful people we are. Sisi ni warembo, warembo, warembo. Sisi wote ni warembo, 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 warembo. Hey, beautiful we are. Beautiful we are. Baby, beautiful we are. Beautiful people we are. We are so beautiful people. Beautiful people we are.
We are such beautiful people. What's happening hivi pusa? Sisi what's happening hivi pusa? What's happening hivi pusa? Sisi what's happening hivi pusa? Yeah.
The online dialogue series of Refugee Poets was commissioned by the Special Initiative on Displacement SIF program of the Civil Peace Service of GIZ. We appreciate the discussions and insights shared. The opinions expressed in these dialogue series are those of the speakers. They do not necessarily reflect the opinions or views of GIZ.